Boston Mike, let's go. This is the Correspondence, the NBA, Boston Celtics December update. Welcome back to the Correspondence, Boston Mike. Happy holidays. How we doing?
I'm doing well, man. I could be doing better after that performance last night.
I was going to say, I think everyone's ready for some happy holidays, maybe other than the Celtics, because they played the Bucks last night, and outside of a 10-1 run to open the game, the Bucks pretty much dealt with them from start to finish. What was your reaction to how the Celtics played last night?
I just don't think that, number one, even when we're healthy, we don't match up great against the Bucks because they're big, they move the ball, they play a lot like us, and especially when we're not healthy, especially at the big spot, it's really tough to keep pace with those guys because we can't have guys like Jaylen Brown and Tatum guard Giannis. It's just not going to work against those guys. So we need to get healthy and get a little energy going, get back to playing defense, and then, we start making a run like we just did the past couple games before losing to Detroit.
The thing that was interesting to me about the game last night was it really felt like Boston was super frustrated by Milwaukee's length. Tatum and Brown, even Smart a couple of times, they drove into the paint, and a big guy, either Lopez, Maker, Giannis, they were all jumping straight up. The Celtics are creating all the contact, and they were looking for foul calls, and they were frustrated that they weren't getting them. The Bucks dominated for a stretch in the first half where Snell and Middleton just went off on them. But I felt like the defense got better in the second half. They forced a few more turnovers. They were getting more pressure. But where the Bucks were getting buckets, other than Giannis getting to the free throw line, was Boston getting frustrated and then Milwaukee hitting threes in transition because Boston just didn't get back. And it was just like they were out of their game because of Milwaukee's length, really.
It was weird because even when we would start going on a run, they would come right back, and like Tom Maker would hit like 3 threes in a row, and they just couldn't really stop anybody on the other side of the ball, even when we were scoring. So, but yeah, their length definitely kills it. Middleton's a great scorer, so when he's on, he's on. But like I said, when we're not healthy and we don't have the size, we're not going to match up well with a team like that.
And I think that the defense will be better against the Bucks in like a playoff series. They didn't have great energy the whole game, though they showed it in spurts. And I think that they can defend the Bucks. And like guys like Snell and Maker hitting that many threes, I don't think that's sustainable for the Bucks over the course of a series. They'll have some problems with Giannis because he's one of the 5 best players in the league. Everybody has problems with Giannis, but I think the defense will be better. But more of the concern for me is the Celtics offense, and the Bucks are just pretty much longer at every position. I think Boston can manage that if they get a little tougher mentally, but last night it didn't seem like they had that. And even Jaylen Brown, who I felt had a good game overall, he was really reckless for stretches, like especially when he first entered the game. Threw up an air ball layup, had some other just reckless drives, and it's just, to me, it looked like a team that was pressing a little bit and also just isn't used to the length that they were going up against.
Yeah, I like when Jaylen was being aggressive. He was when he got mad, like towards the end of the game, and then he started scoring like he just didn't really care, and he just took it about himself. But before that, he was definitely frustrated with their length and not being able to get to the free throw line. But like you said, in spurts, you can see that they can be aggressive, they can play defense, they can get out and score in transition, but they couldn't do it consistently enough last night.
Before we close on Celtics-Bucks last night, and there weren't a lot of bright spots for the Celtics, but that Jaylen Brown dunk over Giannis, whoa.
Yeah, that was big time. It was a great move. I just don't like the fact that we were down by 15 at that point, and then you go and like flex on people. I think that's very immature. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, are you trying to show someone up, or are you trying to win the game? And I get the impulse to like look at somebody after you did just something nasty right over the top of their head. I mean, Larry Markkinen in the Bulls game last night did it to Vucevic. It was real quick, and he got a tee. But it wasn't a real quick thing with Jaylen Brown. He looked at him, he thought about it, then he flexed on him as he's still backpedaling, and it's just not smart. It doesn't show any competitiveness to try to win. It was just about him in that moment, and that's what I also didn't like about it. Moving on, the Bucks-Celtics game I thought was a good measuring stick to see where the Celtics were at, because they've kind of had an up-and-down season to this point. everyone thought, at least I did, thought that they would kind of sleepwalk to the 1 seed and 60 wins and go to the finals. And there are some challengers, Philly and Toronto. Milwaukee's been, I think, even a little bit better than people thought they would be. But they started 10-10, and then it looked like they got it together. They had an 8-game winning streak. It was a cupcake schedule, but they slaughtered everyone on that schedule by like 25 points. But now we're back in a 3-game losing streak, and while the loss last night to Milwaukee might be forgivable, losses to Detroit and Phoenix, like, that just can't happen. Are we just in for a up-and-down season with Boston, or what are you expecting to see out of them the rest of the way?
I think, and like what I mentioned earlier, before the season really got going, was that it takes time to incorporate guys into the lineup, especially because the team is pretty much like completely different from last year. So like when you add guys like Gordon back, who's a scorer, who used to average 20 points a game, it's tough to add him back into the lineup and play as effectively as they did last year. So I think you are in for an up and down season, and it's gonna take a while. It's like all teams that bring superstars together. It happened to LeBron in Miami. It happened to LeBron when he came back to Cleveland. It takes a while for everybody to get on the same page, and that's what you're seeing early in the season here. And it's probably going to take till the midpoint of the season for them to really get gelled together.
And I think that the two guys that we've already mentioned, Hayward and Brown, are the two that seem to have the biggest struggle adjusting. Hayward is shooting 40%, Brown 41%. They're both under 33% from 3 at the moment, which just they're usually more efficient than that. And it could be like right now, the Celtics have 11 guys that are getting over 10 minutes a game. I think Brad's just tinkering and see what will work, but eventually that rotation is going to have to shrink a little bit so guys can get comfortable in the game and actually get some burn to get a rhythm.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough right now, but I don't know. We'll see what happens when everybody gets healthy. Hopefully Al will be back soon. And then Morris, obviously, he's a big part of our lineup. Tice is just getting back, and then obviously we're thin at the big position, so Baines being out of 4 to 6 weeks is going to be big. So Robert Williams is going to have to step up.
Yeah, while we're on that, I was going to ask, what's the status of the Horford injury and how soon is he supposed to be back?
Well, Horford has patellofemoral tendonitis. Arthritis, sorry. And, that it's just like inflammation behind the kneecap, so that usually takes, a couple weeks off because you don't want to inflame it so much that you have to have surgery and have like a knee scope to get rid of that inflammation under there. So, they're going to be cautious with him, especially at his age. I wouldn't be surprised to see him out another week, to be honest with you.
Do you think that was bothering him for a while before he went out too? Because, he hasn't been terrible. He's been solid this season, but it does seem like maybe not quite as explosive or dynamic as we're used to seeing Horford. Was that part of maybe a little bit of the drop-off in his play so far this season?
Yeah, I would think so. I think I read a report that said he's had some pain in that knee for a while. So it's not something that's just acute. It kind of happens over time. So I would think that it's definitely hampered his play recently.
So you mentioned Robert Williams. He's the draft pick that they got late in the first round, who had some problems in the offseason. He had some, character questions coming into even the draft before the Celtics took him. But he was supposed to have a lot of talent and be uber athletic. He's gotten some burn now with some of these injuries to the Boston Bigs. What have you seen from him so far?
I like what I see, honestly. He was kind of like that guy that I was talking about earlier in the season that, he can protect the rim, and then on the other side of the ball, he can finish around the basket and, catch alleys and stuff like that. But it's going to be really his work ethic. Is he going to want to run up and down the floor? Is he going to be able to stay out there for extended minutes now that we have injuries? I like the kid, but he almost reminds me of like the New England Patriot version of Josh Gordon. Like you don't really want to like rely on him yet because you don't know what you're going to get. So we'll see what happens with him. But I do like what I see, and now with like we were just talking about with these injuries, he's going to have to step up and play well, especially at the big position where we're thin.
Yeah, I don't entirely agree with liking what I've seen from him because I watched the Phoenix game, I watched the Milwaukee game, and I think he landed in a good spot because to me he looks a little bit intimidated, which is good in some ways, and I think he's intimidated because of just the status of the team, having a Kyrie, having a Hayward, having, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, those are strong personalities to have around. And he's busting his ass on defense from what I can see. He's trying to get to the right spots, and he's a rookie, so he's going to be it's going to take him a while to process some of these things, but I see effort on that end. Where I'm questioning him is I want him to be ultra aggressive offensively, and when he's catching it under the hoop, he's looking to kick the ball out. And I want to see him go up and see some of that athleticism that made him such a good prospect and just go up and try to dunk on somebody. Even if it gets sent back, I would rather you get a dunk or get a chance to get to the free throw line or something like that, and he's getting under the hoop and he's just looking to kick it out for threes almost every time. So just a little bit more aggressiveness out of him offensively.
Are you talking about that play last night?
Yeah, he had probably 3 of those last night where he was in the paint, and I was like, go up. Because Daniel Tice, in his minutes, he had a nice dunk on one, and he was just a little bit more aggressive, and I just want to see a little bit more of that out of Williams, and maybe that'll come. Like, he's only a couple of games into his career because he wasn't getting a lot of playing time at the start of the season, so maybe he just needs to get a little bit more comfortable, but that's been...
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He's young, he's raw, he's on a team full of scorers, so he's going to have to be like that DeAndre Jordan type of guy who gets, a lot of stuff around the basket, like, just second chance points, a ton of rebounds, block shots. That's the kind of player that we need him to be with all the scoring that we have on offense.
Yeah, and it's funny that I'm criticizing him for not being aggressive enough because it does seem like the Celtics just called a team meeting after that Bucks game last night, and part of it was we're being a little bit too selfish, so to call out Robert Williams for being too passive is ironic on a team that seems like they're struggling with how everyone should be getting each other involved. But I guess let's move back to with some of the problems with the Celtics that they're having, and most of them seem offensive because overall they're still third in the league in points per possession right now, and they're doing pretty well in every defensive metric, maybe other than rebounding. So it seems like it's just finding some consistency on offense. But before we get into players and things like that, how would you just rate Brad Stevens' performance so far this season?
I don't know. I think Brad is a great coach, and obviously that's evident with what he did with the kind of team that we had last year. But this year, I don't know. I think he's just trying to find the best rotation and the best guys to have on the floor at the same time, given the pieces that we have now. So, I mean, I don't think he's doing a terrible job. I just think that it's just like what's going on with the team. It's going to take a little bit for them to figure out who needs to be on the floor, who plays well with who, and the exact rotation that he wants moving towards the second half of the season.
Yeah, there are 2 guys who I think are good coaches in the league that are kind of in tough spots. Brad Stevens is one of them. There's a lot of talent on this team, and how do you work it all out? Because I think no one's going to question that Brad Stevens is an amazing coach for an underachieving, for essentially an overachieving team, a team with a little less talent. He's going to get every bit out of that when he needs to maximize the few players that he has. But it's a little bit different task to kind of work with a ton of talent and a lot of personalities, and can he be that leader? And the other person who I think is kind of in a similar situation, though there's not as much talent, just a lot of personalities, is Luke Walton in LA. I think both of those guys are good coaches. I'm not sure if Luke Walton, well, I think he's doing a fine job, and I think that he should keep his job. I'm not sure if the job isn't too big for him. He seems to me like he could be a little bit intimidated. Brad Stevens, while his team isn't playing well, he still seems super cool all the time. Like, he's got it under control, exactly, and he's working it out. So I still trust him. Like, he's got the perfect demeanor, in my opinion, for handling this type of situation. And I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. And while I'm not as confident as I was at the start of the year, I still feel like the Celtics are going to figure out a way to work this out.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to figure it out. Moving forward to the second half of the season, I think you're going to see them getting back to what they were doing last year and playing defense at a high level, which created a lot of their offense last year. So I think that's the direction they're moving in.
So Kyrie is putting up some great numbers. He's averaging over 22 points, 5 boards, over 6 assists. He's shooting 47%, including 40% from 3. And I think since Thanksgiving, they mentioned on the telecast last night, he's shooting like 47% from 3. So numbers-wise, he looks great. In your opinion, is he at all a part of the problem the Celtics are having, or is it more the young guys and getting Hayward back in, or is Kyrie's leadership maybe, or game even, not exactly what fits best with this roster?
No, I think Kyrie's doing a great job. I don't really fault him at all. Maybe a little bit on the defensive end, just because he's never really been a great defender, and it just really goes back to having guys like Gordon in the lineup, and he's the point guard. He has to figure out where these guys' spots are, what's gonna put them in the best situation to score. So it's gonna take time for these guys to gel together, and I think Kyrie's always gonna do his thing. He's always going to be a scorer at a high level like he's been his whole career. And he's just trying to figure out what's the best way to get everybody involved.
Yeah, there are times where I feel like Kyrie over-dribbles a little bit, but it's also his best skill. And I just think with so much talent on the court at times, and as you mentioned, they've had some injuries, so not all that talent has been out there all the time. But just getting guys a little bit more involved. And that's why I've liked the Marcus Smart addition to the lineup, because he is a shoot-last point guard. He takes some crazy threes and things like that, but if you look at Marcus Smart's assist rate for his usage, he's like one of the best point guards in the league as far as how many assists he gets for the number of possessions that he uses. And I think moving Kyrie a little bit more off the ball, where he can still be like a combo guard, a little bit point, a little bit, just playmaker, I think has been good for them. And that lineup of Irving, Smart, Tatum, Morris, and then plug in whatever center you want, those have been their best lineups, and Brad's found something with that. Do you think that lineup that they're currently running out there right now, will that be their starting lineup come the playoffs, or do you expect either Brown or Hayward or both to kind of get back into that starting lineup by playoff time?
I would expect Brown to be in there, and I would think, unless it's going to be a big turnaround for Hayward, I would expect him to kind of be on the second unit. We'll see what happens, but I think you're going to see Brown in there, and Smart more towards the second unit. But there's no question that those guys are definitely going to run together. There's no question about that in the playoffs, because he already knows that that's a lineup that works. And if you can get Kyrie off the ball and let another guard handle it, I think that's a great thing for us, and especially for Kyrie.
Yeah, if you could get Hayward back closer to where he was prior to the injury, I love him and Brown coming off the bench. I just don't know if that'll be good for managing all the egos, but essentially you would have two starting lineups that are rotating in and out. And when you add Rozier in there with Brown and Hayward, and I mean, that lineup is a killer lineup off the bench that would be better than a lot of team starters. And so it'll be interesting to see how it's managed. But so far, the only thing that has definitely been working for the Celtics is the Irving, Smart, Tatum, Morris center combination. And I think when they didn't have Morris in there and they didn't have Smart, the thing that was really killing them, their shooting numbers overall haven't been amazing, but they've been fine. It's been rebounding, and I think both Smart and Morris are very good rebounders for their position and just add a little toughness. And having Brown and Hayward in there kind of makes that lineup a little bit small and a little less physical. So having a good physical lineup, I think, is really good at any point in the season, but especially in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm most curious how Brown is going to handle all of this, because I feel like he expects a lot out of himself, and will he allow himself to, be a dynamic six-man type, or is his ego needing a starting lineup position?
Yeah, but I think Brad does a good job of getting guys to buy into whatever it takes to make the team win, and you know just as well as I do that in the playoffs, it's all about matchup. So whatever matchup is going to work for that particular game or that particular series, that's what he's going to roll with. So I don't really think that the ego part of it's going to play a big deal, especially on a team like this. I think that Brad, like I said before, he's figuring out the matchups that he likes and the matchups that work. So he can roll with those towards the back half of the season and into the playoffs.
Yeah, to your point, yesterday Brad started Ogilvy, and I know that they had some injuries, but I don't feel like Ogilvy is going to be starting against the Hornets in a couple of days. I think that was a nod to try to get a bigger body to try to bother Giannis. And that's what Brad does, is he just looks for the best matchup, and that's what he goes with. And if you have the right mentality on the team, then that will work out. If they all understand that this coach only cares about winning and nothing else, And if that's what matters to the players, then it will work out. So it'll remain to be seen how this team responds to that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I tell you what though, like in terms of Hayward, I'm really nervous about his progression through the year because I thought that he would be kind of in his form by now, but he just still doesn't look comfortable at all.
Yeah, and some of the things are strange because I would feel like just shooting, like his 33% from three is concerning because even looking at the threes that he's gotten in the Phoenix game, in the Milwaukee game, those are good open.
He's wide open. They're good looks.
Yeah, absolutely. He's taking them when he should be, but there is something in the confidence because he should be knocking those down at a much higher clip, and it's just some of those things. I would get if it was drives to the basket or field goal percentage around the rim or things like that. Hopefully he just needs another month or two to work his legs back, but he does look really good.
I think it's all like mental and confidence because like he took like a turnaround jumper yesterday and he hit all backboard. And I'm from like 15 feet. And I'm thinking like I've never seen Gordon do this in his whole career, even in college. He just doesn't look comfortable on the basketball court at all. And I think it's really it is mental, but hopefully he can turn it around because if he's playing like this going towards the playoffs, it's not going to be good for us.
Yeah, I mean, really what they'll have to do is he's going to have to sit, and that's going to be tough to have your highest paid player on the team sitting come playoff time. But he can't be going out there missing those wide open shots and just questioning himself. And I don't feel like it was quite this bad when Paul George was coming back from his injury, but it almost took a full season before Paul George was Paul George again. And now here we are 3 or 4 years removed from Paul George's injury, and he's finally like past the level that he was at before, but it took him a long time to get there. So it might take more than 30 games for Hayward as well. And as a Celtics fan, that's what you have to hope for, because if this is the Gordon you're going to see, it's not going to have a ton of trade value, and you don't want to be paying that guy $30 million a year.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Hopefully he turns it around because they need someone, and especially Kyrie needs someone who he can get the ball to, who's high, who can score 25, 30. So hopefully he turns it around.
Yeah, the only thing Hayward's been doing well is he's getting almost 4 assists a game for the 25 minutes he's playing, and to have a Smart and a Rozier and a Kyrie all handling, even Tatum handling the ball a lot more. I feel like that's a pretty good number for him. So he's making plays, and he's not been a total minus, but he's certainly not the Gordon Hayward that the Celtics were expecting when they brought him in. We've had a lot of negative talk about this team so far. They're still, 18-13, 2 games out of having home court in a first round series. They're still in the mix, and everybody's within striking range. If the Celtics all of a sudden become the team we thought they were, the 1 seed's still in play. Toronto's hasn't run away with it the way it looked like they were going to for a little while. But let's talk on the positive side of things. I think Kyrie has been the best Celtic. I think the numbers back that up. After Kyrie, who's been the next best Celtic?
From what I've seen on both sides of the court, I would think it's got to be Tatum. Him and Jalen kind of play, off each other. So either one of those guys have been like the second best guys. I'm saying that because Al hasn't really been healthy. Mm-hmm. So I would say one of those guys, but probably Tatum just because of his ability to score at a high level, which is what we need.
Yeah, Tatum's been solid. I think he had a slow start to the season, but unlike Brown, he's sort of found his legs a little bit. He's averaging almost 17 points, 46% from the field, 40% from 3. But the one concerning stat is he's in the 95th percentile in long twos attempted. That's from like 14 feet to the 3-point line. And I don't know why he loves those shots so much, and either just take a little bit more of a step back. And it's not killed his field goal percentage, but I just feel he could be more efficient with those types of shots. And I mean, he's 20 years old, so he'll learn this stuff. But for a team that's trying to win a championship now, you're just like, can we do a little bit better there? And he's also one of the guys on the team where he's in the 21st percentile in assists per usage among wings. He's not a very good passer or playmaker as a wing at this point in his career. And I think that his role is to be a scorer. Like, the Celtics have to have a couple of guys that are looking to get buckets, but just a little bit more playmaking for him would also be nice to see. but a solid season after a little bit of a rough start. I think the other guy to kind of highlight, who we haven't talked about that much, has been really good for them, is Marcus Morris.
I agree.
He's scoring 15 points a game with 6 boards, shooting 42% from 3. I mean, it's exactly what you need out of the 4 position in today's NBA. And he's just that tough, asshole that every team needs a couple of those. And the Celtics are lucky to have a number between him and Smart and Rozier, but he just brings some toughness up front, along with Baines, that I feel like a team like this needs, but he's not like Baines, who's very one-dimensional. He's that tough guy who's also highly skilled, and if you get matched up with the Bucks in the playoffs, he's going to be one of the guys taking on a big load and guarding Giannis and things like that. So I think he's been excellent for the C's so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely been big this year, and hopefully he can keep his consistency up throughout the season and stay healthy for us, because that's definitely big.
So the Celtics can't trade for Anthony Davis this year because they have Kyrie Irving on the team, and there's some weird quirk in the collective bargaining agreement that you can't have 2 guys on this Derrick Rose contract that both Kyrie and Anthony Davis are on. So unless they included Kyrie in the trade, Anthony Davis won't be a Celtic until at least this summer, because then Kyrie can sign a new contract, and then they would be open to trading for Anthony.
I think, don't they have to they have to restructure his contract?
Yep, exactly. So Anthony Davis is out. So any Anthony Davis to the Celtics rumors, it won't happen this year. How worried? Are you still hoping for him this summer? What percentage chance do you think that there is? And how worried are you that the Lakers are just going to come in and swoop him up this season before the season's over?
I'm definitely worried about the Lakers grabbing him, because I think that's where, I don't know, I feel like that's where he wants. I mean, he has a house there, so I feel like that's where he wants to be. And also him signing with Rich Paul, the agent, I think that plays a big part in it. Him and LeBron had dinner last night, like all these rumors that are surfacing. So I'm definitely nervous about it, but I think when he steps back and looks at the situation as a whole, he is looking at the Eastern Conference like, man, I could be in the championship every year with a young core of guys, instead of being in the West where it's always going to be tough. And then I got to join the Lakers with LeBron, who I'm only going to play with for a few years, because then he's going to retire. And then I got to basically go back to what I was doing before. So I think they honestly have a good chance of getting him. But I don't know. I would give the percentage at probably like 40% that we get him in the summer.
It's interesting to me. I feel like the Lakers have a tough decision on their hands, because from the Lakers' perspective, if they go and get him right now, A, they're giving up a bunch of assets, but B, they're going to clog their cap space between AD and LeBron. They won't be able to sign another max guy. The way that it could work for the Lakers is they wait till the summer, they sign Kawhi or Clay or whatever, and then they trade for Anthony Davis, and because of the way salary caps work in the NBA, because he's traded for, then they could add in that salary, and they could have 3 of those guys and then just fill in from there, and they'd be all right. So in LA's ideal situation, they would wait for the summer, sign that free agent, and then trade for Anthony Davis. But if they do that, then they're letting the Celtics come into play, which becomes a little bit dicey. So do the Lakers pull the trigger now when they're the only team that can really make an offer for him, which I would have to think would be in Ingram, Ball, Kuzma, or Hart, one of those two, and a draft pick would probably be the package. And I think that the Celtics can easily put together a better package than the Lakers can. But will Anthony Davis allow himself to be traded to any place but LA? From a basketball perspective, it seems like Boston is a better fit than LA is, but I don't think that that's where Anthony Davis is wanting to go right now. What would you, if we fast forward to the summer, what kind of package would you give up for Anthony Davis? What is the trade that you think makes the most sense?
I would give up Horford, Brown, and probably a first-round pick.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers, and a Horford, Brown, Rozier for Anthony Davis and E'Twaun Moore, and you could even throw a pick in there, that would make it work. Let me ask you this. If it was Horford and Tatum for AD, do you do that?
There's no chance, and there's no combination that works with Tatum. There's no chance they give him up.
Interesting. from an objective perspective, I think that the Celtics, part of their problem is there's just too many pieces on the roster right now, and just clearing up some of that. And if I have Kyrie, a couple of these wings, if it's Brown and Hayward, Tatum and Brown, whatever. If I have two of those wings, Kyrie and Anthony Davis, I feel like I'm good to go. And I just feel like, Tatum has a ton of potential. He's not going to touch where Anthony Davis is at. So I would throw him into that deal if I had to. But I would definitely push a Horford, Brown, Rozier. I would even throw in a first-round pick if I had to into that type of package to try to do everything I could to hold Tatum back. But if they said, hey, we're going with the Lakers if you don't give us Tatum, I'd probably throw him in there personally.
Yeah, which they're probably going to do because they know that they can get one of those young guys from LA. So, I don't know. I personally wouldn't give up Tatum. I'd rather give them Smart with his contract.
Right.
So, like I said before, that it's going to be something that goes down to the summer because Davis is going to want all options open. I mean, I know LA is going to make a pitch, obviously, while they're the only team that can until the summer, but I don't think you're going to see anything until the summer.
I feel like it would be a desperation move by LA to go now because I still feel like they have the advantage because between the agent and the house and everything, all signs point to AD wanting to go to LA eventually. And because of that, I think that would make me a little bit more confident as the Lakers front office to hold off and try to get themselves the ultimate situation rather than kind of compromise and try to pull that trigger now. And who knows, the Pelicans might not even listen to offers until AD demands out, and I'm sure that's probably what LeBron and Davis were talking about. Like, LeBron's just saying, sit tight for this season, we'll get you next year. So
yeah, and I think AD will do that too. Well, I think that, I don't think he's going to say anything until the summer because, I mean, you never know. What if he does want to sign that Supermax contract and make an extra $75 million? It's like,
It seems like right now, the Pelicans, they started out 3-0. They blew a couple of teams out, and I was like, oh, they might actually be good with Randall and Mirotic and everything. And they've been hit with a ton of injuries. However, this team is almost second to last in the West. I think only the Suns and Timberwolves are behind them right now. This is like the scenario that any team that's going for Anthony Davis at a trade deadline is dreaming of. Like, they don't look great at this point, and you would think this would be the kind of situation where Anthony Davis is like, all right, it's time for me to move on. And for the Pelicans, if I'm the Pelicans, actually right now is when I would want to trade AD. I would move him out currently if I was the Pels to get back that package. Also tank this season. And then if you can all of a sudden get a Ingram, Ball, then you still have Randall, Mirotic, Holiday, and now you add in a Zion Williamson or a JT Barrett. That future doesn't look so bad compared to what it could be if they wait it out and get a middling draft pick and then have to add these pieces later. But that's enough talk about next summer. Let's talk about this season. How worried are you about the Celtics coming out of the East now compared to where we were at the start of the season before it got going?
My mentality really hasn't changed because this is kind of what I expected halfway through the season. I still think that they have a great shot at coming out of the East. We're fifth right now. I didn't foresee Indiana being ahead of us, but Milwaukee and Toronto and Philly are all great teams, especially Philly acquiring Jimmy Butler. But I still think that we're going to get our shit together and they're going to play a lot better the second half of the season. I think it's going to come down to pending matchups. It's going to come down to us and Toronto because when Toronto is healthy, they're playing the best, and not only the East, they're playing the best in the league.
I feel like every team has some question marks. Toronto, just their playoff history. Now they've added Kawhi, but I still feel like they need one more guy that they can rely on because Ibaka's been really good for them and Siakam's been really good for them. But I need to see Siakam do it in the playoffs because he's really the guy. If he can reach his full potential, they're real dangerous. But I feel like they get a little bit too reliant on Kawhi when the going gets really tough, and I think that could be exploited by good teams like the Celtics in the playoffs. But they're absolutely a threat. Philly's question mark is, can they fill in the rest of the roster with some of these buyout contracts? Because right now they're just way too thin. They have the top-end talent, but they don't have any of the supporting pieces. You can't be running TJ McConnell and Amir Johnson out there for as many minutes as they're running them out there and really expect to win in a very tough Eastern Conference.
Right, exactly.
And Milwaukee, like, Giannis is incredible. I think he just needs to round out his game a little bit more. 94% of his points come from the free throw line or in the paint. And I just think that can be game planned for in a 7-game series. And I also think that Milwaukee will... This is their first year under Coach Bud. I think that they'll make some personnel changes and upgrades and be even better in years to come. But I think that they're still figuring it out a little bit, though they've looked really good. Of all the teams, they seem the most complete, both offensively, defensively. But if you're still relying on Maker and Snell to hit shots, like, those are the pieces they got to move out and get somebody else in there for. And Indy has been a nice story, but until they win one of these playoff series, I don't think anybody's really going to believe in them. So,
right, it's like Charles Barkley said the other day on TNT. He was like, "Yeah, but it's still a 4-team race." And Reggie Miller was like, "What about Indiana?" He was just started laughing. So I don't even think Indy's in the question too. So.
In the end, I think that Boston will be the team that comes out. They've just made things a lot more interesting than I anticipated them being. I know that you said you expected some ups and downs, but after that win streak, I was like, okay, I feel like we're here and we figured it out. But clearly not the case. And really, for the rest of the regular season with this Celtics, nothing would really surprise me. They could go in at like 49 wins, and I'd be like, okay, but they could also get it together and get into the 55, 56 win range. But I don't think that they would really like a path where they're sitting in a 5 seed where they have to go on the road to Indy in round 1, go on the road to Milwaukee in round 2, and go on the road to Toronto in round 3. That would just like make it unnecessarily hard on themselves.
Yeah, they got to get into those top seeds. It's a must.
Ideally, a 2 seed would be good. I don't know if they can realistically hop all 4 of these teams to get to the 1 seed. It's certainly mathematically possible, but you have to think that either Milwaukee or Toronto is really going to keep going the rest of the season. It'll be tough to make up all of that ground on both of those teams. But if you can have that second round playoff series at home, if I'm Boston, a worst case scenario is second round in Philly. That would be a series I wouldn't want a lot of.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, we'll check in on this Celtics team a little bit after the All-Star break and see if they figured it out and have started to climb in the standings or not, or if we're in for the toughest road possible through the playoffs.
Sounds good, man. Always good talking to you.
This has been the Correspondence, the NBA, Boston Celtics December update. Thanks for your ears.